Welcome to the Nutrimedical Report, and we have Clay Crossan for the first half of the hour. We want to also make you aware that it is open lines on any topic, and of course in the first 2 hours on Mondays we usually discuss NutriMeds and our latest protocols. A lot of new developments happening, and one of the latest is of course the whole issue of what are the metabolic problems the basis of illness. One of the first things we were realizing is that certain amazing supplements we have do a lot more than we initially thought. For example, one of my favorite that's now back after a period of time was back order because we were reformulating is Samethyl, S-adenosylmethionine, and the other is BioLVR. And I'd like to start off with this because methylation is a really big deal. It's necessary to protect myelination of nerve fiber tracts in your central brain and your peripheral nerves. It's necessary for digestion. It's necessary for detoxification of many things, especially heavy metals. And without methylation, a lot of processes in the body just don't work. Also, pyridoxine, the pyridoxal 5-phosphate, which we have in BioLVR, which has B12 and folate, actually methylated folic acid and B12 in its 5-methyl form are absolutely essential for your blood system, for very many enzymatic processes in the body. And the number of people who are deficient is just staggering. So let's talk about some of these kind of things, because I think as we talk about methylation, we have the SS isomer in a nitrogen sachet with 600 milligrams of trimethylglycine. And it's really important, especially for things like reducing homocysteine, which is a major cardiac risk factor. And I discovered this some years ago doing it clinically, that when you expose someone to doing a test for homocysteine, which is a major risk factor by itself for heart disease, that if you give them a challenge with L-methionine, say 500 milligrams the night before, many people who wouldn't show a major surge will, or a big protein meal the evening before, their body will dump a lot of homocysteine into their arteries, which burns blood vessels, walls, and nerves. So, Clay, let's talk about SAMe and BioLVR. These are important kind of formulas, and I just did a consult yesterday, and I actually had a young person in their teens that actually showed significant methylation disorder on his QRMA testing. We can confirm it further with tests at Genova Metametrics Lab through labtestingdirect.com. So let's discuss this for a minute.
Yeah, well, as you know, methylation is key to almost all major functions of the body, and there's an interesting study that was done on folic acid and B12 in psychiatric patients who had mild to moderate depression, and just by giving them B12 and folic acid, even the non-methylated form, about 2/3 of them came out of their psychiatric state. So we can see that there's clearly a methylation defect. And BioLVR, there's nothing better out there to help with the methylation process.
Yeah,
in the body.
It's necessary to make a thing called BH4 biopterin, and we sell tons of it, and we had to get a new supplier for it. It was only really one in the world, and it's very effective, but your body makes it all the time. It's made in your blood vessel walls to keep nitric oxide pathways open, to make arteries relax. It's also necessary for the brain for conversion of amino acids to neurotransmitters. So, and it's dependent completely on methylation. So when we see people that have circulatory problems like hypertension, vascular disease, elevated homocysteine, depression, schizophrenia, anxiety disorders, sleep disorders, it's amazing that they're just correcting methylation. Heavy metals. If we do tests on heavy metals, we find their heavy metal levels drop on the QRMA test, and if we do a packed red cell test for minerals and heavy metals, we find the heavy metals disappear pretty quickly as soon as you start clearing the body with proper methylation, because the body takes the heavy metal ion, whether it's arsenic or lead or mercury, ionizes it and attaches to a methyl group to get it mobilized out in the bile out of the body. Interesting, isn't it?
Very.
Yeah, it's some of these things, the science is so clear. I really think that all health professionals, we're not just talking about MDs, we're talking about chiropractors, naturopaths, nutritionists, they're enormously inadequately trained. And it's not something that should be considered alternative medicine. This is molecular, genetic, and organic acid medicine. This is micropathology. This is genetic epigenetics and looking at specific gene complexes. And if you have a SNP or polymorphism, and you got a nutritional deficiency, or you got a toxic load that's blocking the metabolic conversion pathway, like 5-methylfolate reductase. Turns out 25% of the population has a 5-methylfolate reductase SNP or polymorphism of the DNA, which will reduce their ability to convert. But also the entire population have got dioxins, dibenzofurans, and other folate blockers like bisphenol A. And if you don't get those toxins out of their body with things like xenoestrogen detox and NutriDefense, BioLVR, and of course our life support, which has methylation, glucuronidation, sulfation for phase 2 detox, and our Maligna block, which stimulates phase 2 detox pathways, you're not going to get these toxins out. The body can't correct the problem. And a lot of people look at the end-stage disease, and then they throw drugs at the end-stage disease rather than looking at the biochemistry of what's wrong. So it's not just, quote, nutrition. That's why I say supplements are really not optional in our toxic world. Now that we're getting the human genome is being understood, and we understand how toxins can literally jam up enzymes, even if you have the right genes, so that you can't metabolize correctly. Which is part of the reason why we're seeing so many new diabetics and new hypertensives, so many more strokes, so much more autism, is because their biochemistry is messed up. And the conventional doctors are completely lost. And that includes, by the way, naturopaths and others that don't understand this biochemistry other than a very rudimentary level. You have to have a deep understanding of how you can, and then ability to measure it. And my favorite is to start off with a QRMA and a history, then to move up to the functional medicine tests through lab testing direct through labs like Genova, Metrometrics, Lab Doctors, Data, etc. Let's look at some of the other, what I call really important breakthrough supplements that kind of have made what I call a huge difference. One of the ones I was discussing this morning with a diabetic is leptin metabolic. We use that, pair it up with LipoFlush, which helps to repair and restore normal oxidative metabolism to fatty acids and muscles. The diabetoline, biotin plus, and these are, and of course Minerals Plus was these extra amounts of chromium, vanadium, which are low, and magnesium, which is low in diabetics too. But let's talk about leptin metabolic and LipoFlush and diabetoline, biotin plus. Diabetics, basically, they have abnormal fatty acid metabolism in their muscles. They've got elevated cytokine levels coming out of their white fat that messes up their muscles. So if you biopsy their muscle, they have fat globules under scanning electron microscopy. And it jams up their ability of the muscles, the skeletal muscles, to absorb sugar and transport it through what's called a GLUT4 transporter. So the doctors who don't know this are chasing the tail of diabetes or pre-diabetic, which is basically the entire population. And they don't understand that the person has more than enough insulin, but they got decreased insulin receptor or post-receptor metabolic signaling. And if you don't correct that, which we can naturally, and with diet and exercise like vitamin X, vibrational exercise combined with our supplements, you're just going to actually compound the problem rather than fix it. Such as thiamine depletion, which we use with, of course, our ultrathiamine B1, which is a fat-soluble thiamine. So let's talk about these for a minute.
Yeah, the diabetoline, I just really love that approach to helping support your blood sugar patients. You have in there chromium, you have American ginseng, alpha-lipoic acid, green tea extract, anemia, which has been studied for sugar cravings. And then you have the cinnamon, the 10-to-1 aqueous extract licensed from the cinnamon, which is the really studied material, not just cinnamon bark that you get off the shelf at any store. It's actually the studied material, the aqueous extract, so it's a lot safer on the body.
Right, it doesn't have the non-toxic, there's a toxic molecule in the bark it's not present in this. And now the sinulin, in this combination formula, has had double-blind placebo trials, and it has proven that you can take diabetics and turn them to non-diabetic with this alone. But I prefer to use the combination of that and LipoFlush, which improves fatty acid oxidative metabolism. The diabetoline combined with leptin metabolic, which changes the leptin resistance and the insulin resistance dramatically, and biotin plus. That combination is amazing for our diabetic patients. And of course the minerals you want to supply with Minerals Plus, additional ones on top of the Vitamineral Max, especially for blood sugar control and mood. Amazing. When we come back in a minute, we'll take your calls as well on this hour, 800-259-5791. And by the way, we're having some minor phone line problems. I'll explain when we come back.
What?
And Clay Crossan, we're back. And Clay, let's talk about some other health conditions that are very common that people Depression is one of the most common, and we use a combination of nutraceuticals to convert the neurotransmitter amino acids. And most people realize an amino acid, the 20 building blocks, there's 7 essential amino acids, but the building blocks are converted, like tyrosine is converted to norepinephrine and dopamine. Tryptophan is converted with vitamin B6 and molybdenum, the tryptase and pyrrolase enzymes, to serotonin and melatonin. And if you don't have all the minerals present, if you don't have the cofactors like BH4 biopterin, taking things like our BioLVR, which will give you the activated B12 and folic acid, and B6, which is necessary for the formation of tryptophan converting to serotonin. If you don't have the things like samethyl, which is a methyl donor, and trimethylglycine, this process can't occur. And you need the trace minerals like molybdenum, which is present at a good concentration along with calming neurotransmitters in our calm mind, and the orotate form of lithium at the low dose necessary, which is the therapeutic dosage we call a natural dosage, not the high dose in a non-orotate form that doctors give. They can be quite toxic and also can be not good for your kidneys. What we have discovered is the right nutraceutical levels that can correct your neurotransmitters. So when I see someone being given an antidepressant, the fact is they've actually lied. The name is not an antidepressant, it's a dissociative anesthetic. Because none of them have proven they've actually changed neurotransmitter levels, or they're blocking the HTP5 receptor. And so I remember talking to our psychiatrist in 2003 when I was doing my board recertification for family internal medicine in San Francisco. And I thought it was quite kind of obscene that he said, well, we really don't know how these things work. You know, the Japanese developed a drug that works the opposite way, and it seems to help people. So he said it's like putting tinfoil on your 1970s television and twisting it until you get a good signal. And that's not good enough for me. We now have the ability to measure your bioamines in your urine. We're able to measure brain activity using quantitative EEG. We've got advanced tests to look for blood flow to the brain or metabolites that tell us if your metabolism is able to regenerate myelination of nerve fiber tracts, neurotransmitter levels, and normal synaptic transfer of information we call coherence patterns on your Quig scan or quantitative EEG. So there's no excuse for the sloppiness of doctors pretending that if they take out the magic script pad they can fix you when they don't have a faint idea what's wrong. If you were to walk up to an airplane mechanic with the jet in the runway and you're dealing with a very high level of mechanical accuracy in order for the thing to be fit to fly, you wouldn't be certified as a jet engineer very long before you'd be probably put in prison for putting people in danger. And that's the level of what I call lack of scientific rigor that's occurring with modern medicine now, especially now that we have these tests that can measure it. So let's talk about this for a minute. Depression. We have Calm Mind, which is flavored and unflavored. We've got samethyl, BioLVR. We have the trace minerals present in Minerals Plus and Vitamin Mineral Max. We have the superfolate and the Power Methyl B12. There really is no excuse for someone being depressed, anxious, or having insomnia with their melatonin TR. As you start to correct the brain metabolism, the brain just starts to operate normally, just like an engine that's got carburation and everything fixed. So, Clay, let's talk about this for a minute, because it's a big deal. I hear these problems in various forms all the time, including addictions, which, by the way, is a brain chemical imbalance, just like the recent death of Robin Williams, who's bipolar. Bipolarity is a seizure activity of the limbic system caused by neurotransmitter imbalances. And although some people thought it was quite clever because he was able to use his mania to create lots of humor, I think it doesn't take away the bright edge of creativity if your correct neurotransmitter imbalances. It prevents you from crashing on the other side and getting so depressed that you kill yourself, which is what happened with this man. And it's really unfortunate because our nutrition is so poor nowadays. People put their lives in risk because their doctors are putting them on these quote, pills to keep them afloat, as it said recently in a prevention magazine, which I thought was pretty disgusting. So, Clay, tell us what your take is on this.
Yeah, I really love the Calm Mind. I mean, that's my favorite. It works so quickly. You can feel a difference on it just right away because you have in there high-quality forms of magnesium, myo-inositol, taurine, GABA, and L-theanine, and suntheanine.
Right.
And you can feel it without putting you to sleep. It just relaxes you, helps cut cortisol, really improves your mood. So I would start right there.
Yeah.
What you're serving today.
Yeah, now what I often will tell people to do is start off by using the Calm Mind and the Bio-LVR. If reducing your anxiety and correcting methylation and serotonin restoration doesn't fix it, the next step up is to add the superfolate, power-methyl B12, and samethyl. Those two layers, layer 1, core, and the next layer. Usually within a week. And the interesting thing is most antidepressants take 4 to 6 weeks to work. Nutritional therapies take 4 to 7 days. So within a week, you should dramatically improve. If you don't, we need to go to the next metabolic stage of intervention. And if you want to do testing, you can do that testing within a few weeks to a month, and you can find out which is still out of balance. Do you have a methylation problem? And one of the first signs that's present is that you're going to have elevated homocysteine because you're not properly converting and supplying methyl groups. And if the methyl groups are deficient, you're going to have neurotransmitter imbalance and depression, which is pretty significant because a good chunk of the population, 1/10 of American adults, are out now on antidepressants. I think that's pretty darn ridiculous. What do you think?
Did you say how many? 1 in 10, you think?
1 in 10. 1 in 10 adults over 20.
Then you describe them as dissociative agents, don't you?
It's actually not an antidepressant. There's no proof that any drug that has been given ever is an antidepressant. All they are is dissociative anesthetics, and not unlike anesthetics that are more powerful are given to put you in a dissociative state like nitric oxide or some other drugs that are given by intravenous that put you in a state where it's someone else being operated on or someone else who's suffering. It's not you. It dissociates your I or your identity of the id or who you are, your ego, with the body that's suffering. And so they're dissociative anesthetics. So people no longer, in a sense, a full human being. They're actually disconnected. Which is why when you start using natural therapy, you actually make them become themselves again. You unveil them. You don't end up covering them up or making them, I call, bars of the mind, putting them on foolishness. Next area I'd like to touch on, if we have a few minutes, is eye care. And we, of course, have the Can-C eye drops. I recommend that people take Vision Max, very importantly, Nutritrella, Cell Detox Glutathione, and Regenerex, and, of course, the fatty acids to repair the retina and the myelin sheath, which will include the Omega Supreme Krill, and, of course, Omega Cod Liver Liquid, because all of those fat-soluble vitamins are very important to keep a healthy eye. And Vision Max works perfectly well with Vein Away. It turns out that most people that develop visual problems have increased oxidative stress, most likely to elevated blood insulin levels, and they get elevated levels of vascular endothelial growth factor, which you can actually measure in their blood. But you ask doctors if they measured VEGF ever, and they'll say no, even if they're a ophthalmologist and a retinologist. You can do electroretinograms, a Goldman field test, color visual and black and white visual field, and you can do retinal photographs with fluorescein, but the most accurate way of measuring it is to simply do the kind of testing we talk about in terms of retinal function. When we come back, we'll talk about it. Vision Max and Vein Away are some of my new, most important. Welcome back to the Nutrimedical Report. And just want to go over some of our quick specials that we have. We have, of course, a Calm Mind sale and free shipping special. We have an Ebola protection kit special, and that includes Allison Med, Power C, Nutriodine, Silver 100, and NutriDefense. The Ebola continues to roll on, and the World Health Organization has not admitted that it is airborne. And I posted a number of articles last week, as well as blogs, information on Ebola, and I'd like to kind of touch on some of those for a moment. One of them is a link I'm going to post up today that talks about one of the experts that died on the MH17 flight that was a Boeing 777 Malaysian flight. And it turned out he was an expert on AIDS and Ebola, and there's a great deal of evidence to indicate that the U.S. government was involved in the Ebola development that caused this crisis. Very important for people to understand. The U.S. Bioweapons Lab, with links to Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation at the core of the Ebola epidemic. CDC admits hospitals and vaccines cause Ebola. UK and U.S. mainstream media fuel Ebola hysteria. And, of course, the hysteria could be easily dealt with proper public health to make sure no one comes in from these countries that is not put in quarantine, whether they fly in or coming by boat, if they've had any travel to those countries within the last 2014. The Telegraph hypes Ebola as a threat to Britain. The real issue is that it is airborne. If you put somebody in a highly enclosed area like a flying culture tube called an aircraft, you can transfer it. We know that there's several hundred doctors and nurses that were wearing proper biohazard protection, and they got the Ebola anyway. And they didn't have the full biohazard, which is a closed air suit that doesn't allow any air in, but they wore the type of garb that doctors would wear if they're working in an operating room, and more. Now, the epidemic and pandemic plans allow for implementation of martial law. We know that the treaties were signed in 2005 and 6 by all 183 countries and transferred to the military to the control of the United Nations, and the World Health Organization takes care of all healthcare systems. That's already been passed as a treaty, so it doesn't just stand for swine or avian flu, it's any pandemic. So we have to take serious consideration to the fact that the powers that be, especially with the financial issues, are at their wits' end because they can't control the current melee with trying to force Russia into a war in Ukraine, and on the other hand, trying to start a war with the actions of Israel in the Middle East, which of course is also suicide for the state of Israel. So all of these things happening. We have reports, of course, too, in terms of what's going on. The U.S. Army paid for upgrading Russian helicopters. Apparently, it turns out that we're buying a whole series of Russian-made helicopters, and the Army was contracting to command to actually change a lot of the issues on their excess fees, in other words, for re-engineering the cockpit, etc., in the helicopter. So why are we buying helicopters from Russia? I just find it very bizarre indeed. One of the most common issues we find that people have is obstructive sleep apnea. And I tell people you can simply, if you ask your doctor, you get a home oximetry test. There's a website called easybreathe.com. You can actually log on there and find information about how to do a test yourself. If your doctor is amenable to doing home oximetry, the Easy Breathe actually will do a full sleep study, so you don't have to actually go to a sleep lab. It's quite a hassle. And if you do have apnea, don't ignore it, because sleep apnea is common in men and women over 40. And you're not just overweight. We see people of slight weight that are problems with depression, fatigue, etc. Many people that have hypertension or have a risk of many other problems, including right-sided heart failure, they're having CPAP issues. So it's very common, and it needs to be dealt with. And once you get the CPAP under control, especially if you've got somebody that's overweight and who actually loses the weight, they may not require CPAP. But if they're underweight, they may have low muscle tone or anatomical reasons, in which case ENT surgery can sometimes fix the obstruction in the area. And there's a thing called UVPP, uvulopalatopharyngoplasty surgery, that can help that. So I tell people, don't ignore obstructive apnea. If you've had a past diagnosis, don't say because the equipment's uncomfortable or too loud. The latest machine, which is the VPAP, ResMed 9, is probably the best out there, and it's the quietest, under 25 decibels. And it's something that if you have these problems with snoring, choking at night, or waking up not well rested, first assume you have a CPAP problem. We have lots of new information in terms of what's happening in terms of Fukushima. We had Dina Durnford on the show on Friday, and we talked about many of the issues that are going on in terms of they're going to be doing another expedition this week. We posted all the links up so that you can actually support them financially. We'll be sending in some support as well. The real issue is that there'll still be no fish and sea life in the Pacific Ocean. The intertidal region, of course, is the nursery for the oceans. Hong Kong won't permit Japanese food from coming into the country. And of course, TEPCO is going to drop their frozen wall plan because it was never going to work. We recommend that they use Starlight and set up a blockade above Fukushima, because there's an aquifer that runs underneath it. We posted these plans several years ago, but of course they never listened and tried to put an ice wall, which is used to control the slurry ponds around coal, say around West Virginia. It does not work when you have nuclear isotopes that are hot, that can puncture through the wall, and certainly the length of the wall and the length of time they expect to use it, which is for centuries, wasn't smart. This is incredibly stupid, and the companies that are manufacturing the contracting turns out to be all American, including the company that set up the WIP reactor in New Mexico, was the same company that set up a lot of the engineering faux pas and disasters that occurred there as well. So that's very interesting and catastrophic, unfortunately. The number of people who have adrenal dysfunction is remarkably high, and when I do QRMA tests or when I do other testing with functional medicine tests, and people send me their results after they get their testing done, blood, urine, saliva, etc. One of the best tests is to actually measure a 24-hour saliva test for DHEA, cortisol, and melatonin done at Genova Metametrics Lab, and the large number of people have adrenal dysfunction. So we have our adrenal support, 1 to 2 capsules twice a day. Many of those also have thyroid dysfunction and insulin resistance. So many of them, if they have any elevated lipid levels like triglycerides or markers of elevated blood insulin on their resistance on their QRMA test, we will also take our diabetic approach, which of course is leptin metabolic, diabetoline, biotin plus, and minerals plus. And that'll help to reverse that problem along with VX or vibrational exercise. The latest, of course, in terms of allergy season, we're going to be moving here in the next month into the fall allergy season, which are going to be a lot of tree molds and smuts and so on, especially as it gets rainier here in the southwest when the monsoons, and back east when the storm weather starts to really strike. And of course, at that time, you get a lot more molds, etc. And that's going to be a big problem. So we recommend intranasal with vertical nasal silver 100. We recommend you can use a Sinupulse irrigator with Nutriodine and Alamax liquid 4 times a day. Very important. You can use the pure water system water. It's actually pretty well equivalent to distilled water. It has a minimal amount of minerals in it, but it's completely bacteria and virus free. So even in your CPAP machines, you can use a pure water system water. Allerblock and Allergon are amazing. Allerblock, naturally blocking allergies, and Allergon, the diamine oxidase. And of course, the Allison Med will keep your body clear, whether it's the diverticuli in your lower colon, they're just sitting waiting to kind of cause you trouble, like an appendix. We call it left-sided appendicitis. Recently talked to a diabetic this morning who's going to start on our allithiamine, which is our ultrathiamine B1. Very important to protect against thiamine deficiency, because most diabetics have overgrowth of yeast in their lower gut that has thiaminase that destroys thiamine. Thiamine deficiency can cause metabolism, energy problems, neurotransmitter problems, peripheral neuropathy, cardiac neuropathy, and conduction problems, and can cause problems with the broken motor speech area and the insula, the part of the temporal lobe that regulates speech. So it's very important to correct that. I also recommend people, when they're taking the allithiamine, take also bio-LVR, because B6 is often deficient too in the same people. We see a very large number of people with congestive heart failure have thiamine deficiency, and those people also have methylation disorders, so we recommend Samethyl and bio-LVR. Along with the IBS care, which is a propionyl carnitine, CoQ10 Supreme. Welcome back, and when I do consultations with people and physicians, we have actually, it's amazing how many physicians and pharmacists and nurses all want to get well. And many of them have been involved in what I call the pseudoscience of modern medicine. Modern medicine has some areas, for example, if you have a cardiologist with a PhD and they've been studying like Dr. Kilmer McCulley at Harvard University and proved that elevated homocysteine levels don't just occur in maple syrup urine disease in children that have cardiac problems by age 11 or 12, particularly in males, because it's a dominant chromosome that shows up primarily in males, X-linked. That homocysteine elevation can occur in anybody, but to unmask it, you fully need an L-methionine challenge or high-protein challenge with a source that has high methyl groups. And if the person can't properly metabolize it, they end up with homocysteine, which burns your arteries and your nerves. Deficient methylation can mean you can't handle heavy metals. You can't myelinate your brain pathways. You can't create neurotransmitters for correction of depression. And you can't properly make digestive enzymes, because you need methylation in all those processes, including many other detox pathways in your liver requiring methylation. So we have ways of testing that. The first thing we can do, of course, is QRMA and history. The quantitative resonant magnetic analysis machine is amazing. And then we do functional medicine tests. And I can tell you, my favorite is to go to labtestingdirect.com and use one of the functional medicine labs. We have also Dunwoody labs. We'll bring on those experts. Great Plains Laboratory. I've been known Dr. William Shaw now for probably almost 30 years. He used to be one of the top metabolic researchers for inborn error metabolism. And, of course, I will approach those problems and try to correct the metabolism problem of children. In fact, I've done some recent consults of children that had unusual genetic polymorphisms. They send me their organic acids, and I will try to figure out what supplements are helpful and go back and recheck them to see if they're corrected it. So it's much more advanced than the so-called Mickey Mouse level of medicine that's being done. Eventually, of course, we'll have gene probes and treatments will actually fix some of the genetics, but you'll always need supplements, because without the base materials and without the converted materials, you can't support proper body biochemistry, especially because some toxins will block enzyme pathways, and if you don't detoxify, even if you have the right gene, it won't work, and that's really important. We deal with the problem, for example, of osteoporosis, osteopenia, and the best way and the only way really to take minerals for your bones is bone crystals, which is calcium magnesium hydroxyapatite. It's a calcium to magnesium ratio of 2:1, 7 water molecules. You require silica, boron, and manganese. And by the way, 42% of the body weight of bone is collagen type 1, which is the rebar in your bones. And so if you could have more dense bones with bisphosphonate drugs, but on a dual Dexon bone scan, it looks better, but in fact the bones are more fragile, they fracture. It's just like building a concrete overpass with no rebar in it. So you have to have, what I recommend is Collagen Max, number 1, number 2, Mountain Red Velvet, number 3, Tendon Mender, which is going to help the tenocytes to behave more normally and to regenerate proper connectivity. And you'll get the proper bone generation around your teeth, the enamel in your teeth, the Sharpei fibers that hold the teeth roots in place. The membranous bone tends to get not less dense, but to retract away from the tooth roots, so you get cavitations. And even the skull can actually thin if you have dysmyelination, if you have osteoporosis, osteopenia, rather than the thickness. And the thickest part of your skull, of course, is the frontal area. The thinnest is on the temporal, which is why it's particularly dangerous to have hits in the side of the head, because it can cause a rupture of blood vessels and cause a subdural hematoma. Talking about protection against brain injury, we recommend Brain Power, Cognition Plus, perhaps Synaptin as well, DHA, which is docosahexaenoic acid, we call Neurogen, which is DHA, acetylcarnitine, which is going to be in the, you can take the ALC 1000 in addition, and of course it's important to take CoQ10. CoQ10 Supreme and CoQ10 Ubiquinol. Energy metabolism in the brain is very important as well. Every brain cell has up to 10 million mitochondria, and if they're not working properly, a lot of time brain cells aren't dead after a microstroke or a microemboli, like after an ECMO machine from a heart-lung bypass. They're just gone to metabolic stasis, and they eventually you can get dysmyelination because the nerve fiber tracts aren't receiving an action potential. You lose your myelin sheath, and you lose the high-speed saltatory nerve conduction between different neural groups in your cortex of your brain. We have, of course, some of the most amazing things for helping the diet. We have Carbo Block, which blocks with 2 enzymes to block the absorption and metabolism of sugar and carbohydrates. We have Glycemics. We have, of course, the Minerals Plus. It has especially higher concentrations of vanadium and chromium. And, of course, we have leptin, metabolic, etc. These are all amazing. In terms of anti-inflammatory to stop interfascial adhesions, we have the Inflamex. Never, ever take non-steroidals like ibuprofen or Celebrex. These other anti-inflammatories are quite dangerous. They'll destroy your stomach lining, these other drugs, whereas the natural enzymes will not destroy your blood-brain barrier, cross your blood-brain barrier, will not affect your heart, and will turn off inflammation in your tissues very nicely. So even post-op, it's the treatment of choice. And by the way, post-op, you want to be taking things like Mountain Red Velvet, Collagen Max, and Tendon Mender to build up the bridging fibroblasts across the tissue. And it makes a big difference. For detoxing the body, of course, we recommend, of course, the Regenerax, Nutrichala, and Cell Detox Glutathione, the big 3. You want to kill off self-pathogens with our big 3 antipathogenics. Tesla-activated diatomic iodine and nutriodine, there's nothing like it. They may say there is, but they are lying. And Silver 100, the only ionic silver which is in a lethal state, in the state that determines stem cell activation. So any other pretender, there is no such thing as a copycat to Silver 100. It would violate the patent. Any colloidal or nanoparticle silver is incredibly inferior and can cause you problems with ageria, which is blueness. Don't want that. When you're trying to, I call it smarter in an hour pill, you want to get smarter, take Cognition Plus. You might take Brain Power and Synaptin. And I would recommend taking Neurogen, Nutrifos for phospholipid for myelination, Omega Supreme Krill, which is astaxanthin, Omega Supreme. The phospholipids are important for improving myelination. Semethyl and BH4 biopterin, really important. And, of course, the triad of allithiamine or ultrathiamine B1, either or both. I usually take both. CDP choline and uridine monophosphate 300, and you're going to increase cholinergic pathways for motor control and for memory in an area called the cingulate gyrus and the hippocampus that regulates memory. It's a card file system in your brain. So that allithiamine, ultrathiamine B1, CDP choline, and uridine monophosphate we added to the brain power and Cognition Plus and perhaps synaptin. CoQ10 is important for the brain too for function, and we recommend the forms of ATP induction with D-ribose, really important, and ALC 1000. You can make a drink up. When I make my super drink, I call it in the morning, I add to it a heaping teaspoon of ALC 1000 and a heaping teaspoon of D-ribose. And that makes a big difference, which is, I've already given the formula before, but it's glycemics, the Ageless Energize, life support, probably 40 to 60 mils of the omega cod liver liquid, 3 dropper fulls of Nutriodine, and about 10 to 11 ounces, maybe 12 ounces of coconut almond milk in a 2.5 liter blender. The rest is pure water system water and ice, probably with 12 ice cubes, and the rest is water and filtered water. Of course, you don't want regular water because it'll mess up your nutraceuticals. We have, of course, the best way to turn off inflammation in your body is the Inflamex and Cell Defense, and then topically curcumin cream. We also have the Magna Smooth, which I like, which is Arnica montana, Magna Soap, Magna Charge, which I use after a shower or bath. It's absolutely amazing. A lot of people are very concerned about Ebola, and I know at one end they say it's hype. I think a more balanced approach is, yes, there is significant danger. It's not as dangerous as the flu. It would probably take several years for it to cause significant troubles here for the case number to really take off. But there probably is a significant danger of cases starting we call a nidus of cases, where they start spreading it and building the number of cases up, like it probably took several years in Africa. Africa's already a crisis. That's going to blow right now. Between now and the next month or two, I expect commerce to shut down from Africa, especially in big cities like Lagos, Nigeria. When we come back, we'll be talking with Ryan, and we'll continue this amazing discussion on how to get your health back, how to get your biochemistry back, how to nourish your genes, epigenetic nutritional wellness, which is way beyond just herbology or so-called modern medicine with polypharmacy. We provide you with the building blocks to get your biochemistry back to normal, to restore your health, and to give you all the advanced energetic technologies. I'm looking at a new static magnetic technology that we'll be launching here in the next few days that is going to become available. In addition to our Soma Pulse that produces stem cell activation from NASA research, lumen photon, infrared sauna, and mild hyperbaric oxygen, you can do all of these at home or a small clinic, and you can take care of your health naturally, metabolically, and energetically.